When I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
my head up.
I'm from South Carolina, so I just...
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Morris?
Oh, my heart.
Happy 20th anniversary.
My heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? John.
And dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself.
The doctor lived next door to the janitor, to the reverend, and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it for all the more.
Letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
First name's Doni, last name's Glover, in it to win it for the long haul, baby. Frederick Douglass said, when we find a man, and I'll just add, or a woman who has ascended heights beyond ourselves, who has a broader range of vision than we, who has a sky with more stars in it than we have in ours, we may know that he or she has worked harder, better, more wiser than we. They were awake while we slept. They were busy while we were idle. They were wisely improving their talents while we were wasting ours. The next guest on the Emmy-nominated Doni Glover Show is a young lady that I've known the entirety of my journalist career. Her name is Ursula V, and she is one hell of a mentor, especially to mentor me. So without further ado, we'll bring to the stage, let's share some of her bio. Ursula is a native of Baltimore, Magna Cum Laude, didn't know that, at the, I was going to say the University of North Avenue because I graduated there too, but Coppin State University. She got a bachelor's in English, as did I, and a minor in journalism. She received a master's from the University of Baltimore, majoring in publication design. She's also a graduate of the Broadcasting Institute of Maryland and Walbrook Senior High. The author is a staff writer for the Baltimore Times and a former reporter for the AFRO. And she was one of those people who can tell you better than she can, who can show you better than she can tell you. Ursula V, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Doni. Glad to be here.
That's all you're going to say.
Glad to be here. Thankful for another day. Thankful for this opportunity to talk about the amazing work that God has allowed us to do. This marks my first time on the show, and I'm very excited about it.
Well, you should be. Where are you from?
I'm from Baltimore. I grew up in Northwest Baltimore. As you mentioned, when you talked about my bio, I'm a graduate of Walbrook High School. I am the oldest of 7 children. My mother is a retired city educator, and my father, the late John Battle, had a barbershop. You may remember him, Doni.
You know I remember him.
Battle's Barbershop down in Sandtown, Winchester, for many years. So born in Baltimore, bred in Baltimore, love Baltimore, and my upbringing, I believe, has a lot to do with my writing, journalistically as well as creatively through my stage plays. And I grew up in the church, so a lot of my pieces center around the church as well. So,
what church do you claim?
Baltimore.
What church do you claim?
My grandfather, Reverend Dr. William Nelson Stokes, founded a church called New Hope Baptist Church at the corner of Fremont and Dolphin Avenues. And so for many years, I grew up in New Hope Baptist Church, the granddaughter of the founder. And of course, that was my my mother's father. And so I've always been in the church. I currently attend a church in Pikesville called New Life Fellowship Worship Center. So my whole life has evolved around the Black church experience.
So if you are the oldest of 7, that means you've been in charge for a long time.
For a long time.
You've been responsible for other people for a long time. You've been putting your foot in people's butt since elementary school.
Yes. on the basketball court too. A lot of people don't know. I'm former athlete. I ran track for a number of years. Ran track at Walbrook High School. Played basketball at Walbrook High School. So yeah, I was pretty good on the basketball court and on the track and field. In the track and field setting as well at Walbrook High School. And so yeah, all those things have really lent themselves to my writing to a certain degree. Yes, and certainly, as you know, Doni, I guess talking about putting foot, but I think my claim to fame, so to speak, was through the Afro-American Newspaper, and I just I write for the Baltimore Times, but I got to give my props to the Baltimore Afro-American Newspaper as well as the Baltimore Times. The Afro was the paper that started my journalism career, gave me a start. And I guess my claim to fame was I was the type of reporter that would go in and cover those stories that a lot of people didn't necessarily want to cover. For example, some of the racial disparities and injustice that was happening with the African-American police officers in the Baltimore City Police Department. I was the reporter that went in and got the stories behind the stories in regards to the Black on Black crime many years ago. And a lot of people trusted me and would talk to me because I was the reporter that individuals trusted. If you said it's off the record, it's off the record. And so I really developed a very strong rapport with members of the Baltimore City Police Department as well as community leaders. And so that, those things really lent themselves to my career at the Afro-American Newspaper as the reporter that would go in and get the story and would tell the stories that oftentimes people shied away from.
Now, we're going to get to your stage plays, no doubt, but there's no way I can gloss over this storied career at the Afro. Who was the editor during your tenure?
I actually came in under Joe Green Bishop, Mr. Joe Green Bishop. And also I worked under Jimmy Williams. I worked under Michael Brody. I also worked under Taliba Chikwendu. So
Taliba Chikwendu, yes. I remember she was nice to me. She was the first one there who opened the door. I think Mr. Brody told me I needed to go get some more experience. And I did.
Yeah.
And I went back after he left.
Yes, great editors. And each of them
Taliba Chikwendu, I remember her.
Yes.
Was she the first woman editor?
I'm not sure. She was the first woman editor I worked under. Everybody else was males, but I'm not sure if she was the first in the history of the Afro. I'm not really sure about that. But what I can tell you is that Mr. Bishop was the one that actually brought me in. I started out as a freelancer, and when an opening came about when one of the staff writers was moving on to another position, he offered me the position. So I'm always grateful to Mr. Joe Green Bishop for that opportunity. And do you remember Mr. Jimmy Williams, Doni? The late Jimmy Williams?
The name rings a bell. I can't say that I do.
Okay. He was phenomenal. I mean, Jimmy Williams was historic in that he had worked at the Afro some years prior. And so he was there, I believe, in the 1960s. And so he covered a lot of things in regards to covering the racial injustices against African Americans during the 1960s. So he brought that, that experience. And so I learned a lot from him during the time I was at the Afro. And he was the one that actually gave me the opportunity to really get into some of the things that were happening down at the police department in regards to the racial disparities. He gave me that opportunity. It was something I wanted to do for a while because I'd had a number of officers who had talked to me about some things, but there was a bit of discomfort, I guess, at the time in terms of some of the other editors in regards to getting into those things. But Mr. Williams actually provided that opportunity, as did Michael Brody. So that opened up the door to some things happening in the police department, a little bit of a shakeup, so to speak. There were some officers that were promoted based on the articles that the Afro-American newspaper ran that I had written. And Kurt Schmoke actually opened the door to allowing some things to happen as far as some probes. And, you know, he had some things set in motion to see if some of the things that the Afro-American newspaper had reported were true, and they were. So there were a lot of positive things that came out of those stories in the Afro-American newspaper.
So when you hear of a Detective Sean Suter who dies on Bennett Place, and all of the evidence suggests murder, but Baltimore City coroner suggests suicide, what comes to your mind? Do you buy it? I mean, his family and all of in all of their splendor defended their father, Mrs. Suter's husband from DC. I just could never imagine a cat from DC going out sideways in an alley, a dirty alley in West Baltimore. It just never added up to me.
Yeah. What I thought, well, first of all, that was right in the backyard of my father's barbershop. So, you know, the barbershop was down on Mountain Mosier Street. So that was right in the back door of my father's barbershop. And, you know, growing up, I didn't grow up in the area, but I was in the area quite a bit, because my father had, again, the barbershop. He had some properties down there. He had a carry out. So so my sister, well, 7 of us now, but at the time it was 2 of us. And we spent a lot of time down in that area. So I sort of grew up in that area, so to speak. And so, you know, having some, I guess, you know, some roots in that community through my father. So I guess, you know, that coupled with the fact that I thought about, I was no longer with the Afro at the time, but I thought about, if I was at the Afro, if I was still at the Afro and I was doing the type of investigative probing into certain things that I was doing at the time years ago, I guess this was during the 1990s, I would have really delved into that because there were some things that, from what I understand, that as a journalistic person, you know, you kind of have that, and you know about this, Doni, you just sort of have that inner feeling that you have when things aren't necessarily right, and you want to dig into it and get to the bottom of it. So there were some things in regards to that case that didn't sit well with me, that troubled me, so to speak. And as a former reporter for the Afro, that would have been the type of story that I would have got right into and got to the bottom of, to try to get some answers to those things that that didn't necessarily sit well with me, especially in lieu of some of the things that you summed it up. You know, when you talked about the topic, you know, he didn't necessarily have that didn't fit the profile for somebody that would commit suicide. So I'm no longer doing those types of stories, but that certainly is the type of story that, as a reporter for the Afro, that I would have definitely got to the bottom of.
Okay, one last question on your journalism career.
Sure.
The unsolved murders today. I mean, it seems when the rapist guy killed the woman, I'm not sure if she was Latino or what have you, but she was a tech owner. But just before killing her, he assaulted and did harm to this black couple in West Baltimore. And it was as if the white community in Baltimore saw that because of the lack of police attention on the black couple, who may have been poor, this other murder may not have happened had it received the due attention. So I'm asking you about the unsolved murders because you did an award-winning series on the unsolved murders here in Baltimore, and I'm presuming it was award winning because I've never forgotten it, and it hadn't been done in my lifetime, and it hasn't been done since, monitoring the unsolved murders in Baltimore's Black community.
Yeah, I tell you, Donnie, as someone who covered a lot of the Black on Black crime, one of the things that I sought to do through my writing with the Afro, and again, I just give so much credit to the Afro for allowing me to really be able to utilize the paper to tell these stories, is that I wanted to put a face to the individuals who were losing their lives in Baltimore to violence. I did a number of pieces on domestic violence, the women who lose their lives, and men who lose their lives too behind domestic violence. I wanted to put a face to the young Black males in particular who were losing their lives to violence during that time in the 1990s, which I think has worsened since that time. And I remember one year it was really bad. I mean, they had I believe it was a nun that was killed in the church, and it was just a really bad year. One year when I was at the Afro, every year is bad when people lose their lives, but it was just some of the violence that year was just unbelievable. And so my goal through my writing was to put a face to the individuals who were losing their lives to violence in Baltimore, because one of the most unpleasant things for me as a writer that I had to do for the Afro was to go in and to interview these families that were left behind, that were the mothers, the sisters, the daughters of these people who were being killed. And I'm gonna tell you something, that is probably one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do, is to go in after someone has lost a family member, particularly to violence, and have to interview them. It's a pain that you feel as a journalist. It's indescribable. The sorrow, the grief, and the children that are left behind, and the planning of the funerals, and how it impacts not just the immediate family, but the friends. And it just has a trickle down effect to so many people who are affected by murder. And so I wanted to tell the backstory that people, if you watch the news and you hear about the homicides, a lot of times there's not enough time to tell the backstory. So what I sought to do through my reporting at the Afro was not just to talk about a homicide, but to talk about the backstory, the people that are left behind, the people that are affected, which actually has a generational impact on the people who are left behind, such as the children who grew up without their mother or without their father. So those are the types of stories that I really try to tell through the Afro. And the paper was gracious enough to be able to give me the real estate in the paper to be able to really get into those things. And for that, I'm grateful, because it really impacted a lot of people.
Maybe I was a little premature in saying I won't ask you any more questions about it, because there's so much. I mean, I got to ask you about Joy Bramble. Who is she to you?
Joy Bramble is the publisher of the Baltimore Times. She's amazing. She's of course, the publisher. She's a friend. She certainly is a beacon in the Black community. And the way that she started that paper with relatively nothing, her and her husband, Peter Bramble, basically on the kitchen table with just a few $100s. And it's a free publication.
Oh, they got more than a few $100s now. They got old P. David Bramble.
Yes.
About the
amazing family
place. Got Northern Park Avenue. The looks like some construction is happening there, and other places, and as well as a national portfolio. But yes, I remember what the church, St. Catherine's, you mentioned.
Yes.
The role of the church in our journey, in our people's journey in Baltimore. But like you, I started with the Afro, but the Baltimore Times is just a little warmer, a little friendlier.
Yeah, well, the difference. I think one of the major differences for me as a journalist is that it's more of an emphasis on positive stories about positive people. So that's why I no longer necessarily write about the crime, so to speak. That was at a time in my career where I always feel like God has me in a certain place at a certain time. So I was there at the Afro when I needed to be, and moved on to the Baltimore Times when I needed to be there, and I'm still there. And it affords me an opportunity to write, positive stories about positive people. So I get to write about the business folks in the community who are doing great things. I get to write about, people who have programs who are doing great things. I get to write about the grandmother who turned 100 years old. And so those stories that oftentimes don't get reported on, that are positive stories that people need to read about and know about, I'm blessed with the opportunity to tell those stories through my writing with the Baltimore Times.
Ursula, what do you see in Mackenzie Frost chasing out Black elected officials around like she worked for the Klan or something?
Again, I know I probably sound like a broken record, but again, that's the type of story that I would have been on through the Afro-American newspaper. Those are kinds of stories that through the writing at the Afro that I'm
she got my Black elected officials backpedaling, running, ducking her out. And I'm saying, what is wrong with you? Step to her.
Yeah, that's
let her know she's in your city.
That's that's an Afro story for me. That's an Afro. That's the type of story
Could you imagine her following you around, chasing you with that microphone? I think of Marion Barry when that last white lady reporter came up to him about some parking tickets. He's like, "Don't you have some work to do?"
Right.
I mean, I see her punking my elected officials, and it's sad.
Yeah, it's.
Got him.
Everybody has their style. Everybody has their style of journalism. It's that's. I guess that's her style.
But look,
I have mines, and so everybody's different.
Ursula, now they got a newspaper. Fox now owns the Sun.
Yeah.
So they have a serious bully platform, which brings me to the broader question: what is the state of the Black press in this 63% Black city?
Yeah, well, I tell you, it goes back to why we need the Black press in the first place. Because, as I mentioned earlier, you have this show as a platform to talk about the issues. You have the Afro-American newspaper. You have the Baltimore Times. So the need for the Black press is just as important now as it was in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, 50s, 60s. The need is still there because we still have to have those platforms to talk about those issues that are not necessarily covered in the, in the traditional or by the traditional media. The time is just, again, the need is just as great, if not greater, as it was back then, because the injustices still exist.
Did you start writing plays for your own mental sanity? I mean, because Baltimore is a tough town, and I've seen it. This can get on one's nerves, one's last nerve.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a brief story about why I started writing plays. So, as I mentioned, my mother, Vashti Battle Brown, taught special education in the Baltimore City Public School System for over 44 years. And years ago, my mother and I went to go see a play called Beauty Shop, which was Shelley Garrett's Beauty Shop. And so that was sort of like the play that sort of started a lot of things in terms of touring African-American plays. It's Shelley Garrett and Beauty Shop. And so we saw that play. So my mother said, Ursula, you should write a play about teachers. So my first play, The Teacher's Lounge.
So your mother bullied you.
She said, you should write a play about teachers. And so that's how I began my playwriting career. And so what happened was when
my daddy bullied me too. So welcome to the club.
I tell you what, once that play came out, Donnie, it took me a couple years to write it. But I guess the greater point of it is that when the show debuted, my first show, it opened to tremendous success and rave reviews. But what I realized, Donnie, was that through a stage play, I could publicize things that were problematic in the school system. Some of the things that teachers may not have been publicly able to talk about, but I certainly could talk about those things through a stage play. So even though it was a comedy,
like what, like what?
Like I talked about in the teachers' lounge, I talked about teachers not necessarily being paid what they should have been paid. I talked about some of the issues that teachers deal with in addition to teaching in the classroom, such as getting, and this is 2002 when this came out. So I talked about the violence in the school system, and in the play I talked about how teachers all the time had to get.
Did you see that teacher of Douglas get smacked by that young lady? It was all over the news a few years back. I think they chased that young lady out of town, but you could hear that smack around the world.
Yeah, I did. I saw that.
What did you think?
I was appalled. I was appalled, and I'm saying that some of the things I talked about in Teachers Lounge seem so unbelievable, because it's like that people wouldn't do that in the school system, but those things have come to fruition and even gone to another level. So I talked about teacher safety and teachers having to get in the middle of fights and being threatened.
Somebody hit my mother like that. Get my penitentiary cell ready, because I'm going to hurt somebody. You smacked my mother.
Right. So going to your point.
Lost your damn mind.
Yeah. So those are the types of things that I was able to talk about in that show, while also, you know, it was an integration of comedy and drama, but it brought to the forefront the things that teachers often deal with that we don't know that they deal with. And so again, even though it was about educators, the piece touched on societal issues that whether you were or are an educator or not, you could relate to those things that I talked about in that play. I mean, it touched on breast cancer awareness. It talked about the challenges around trying to work full time and being a caregiver for your parents. So it touched on a number of things. And when I realized at that time the impact that a theatrical piece could have on an audience, that's when I knew I'm going to be writing plays. It started with the Teachers Lounge.
What else would you like to share?
I'd also like to share some information about the piece that I have coming up. There's a show that we're going to be taking down to Turner Station. It's the first time we've been in that area with a show. It's called Serenity House from Addiction to Deliverance. And I actually was asked to write the show by Dr. Gregory Branch, who is the Director of Health and Human Services for Baltimore County. He's also the county's health officer. And he wanted me to write a piece that dealt with the issue of addiction. And as a journalist who has covered addiction for a number of years, and by that meaning that I've interviewed people who are in addiction, I've interviewed people who are no longer in addiction. I've interviewed people who operate recovery houses, Vale Leonard, Light of Truth.
What about drug dealers? You interview drug dealers?
I have. And as a matter of fact, in this particular show, Randy Fruity Roberts is one of the major characters in the show. He is a former drug dealer. And so now Randy Roberts is utilizing his singing ability to be able to reach people so that they can overcome addiction. That's one of the powerful backstories of the show, that we actually have someone that was involved in that's actually helping people now to overcome addiction.
A lot of people don't know that selling dope is as addictive as using dope.
Yeah.
For everybody that's buying some dope, there's somebody selling it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I tell you,
begets insanity. Yeah.
And the amazing thing is that, and that's why we've been doing this show since 2017. And the amazing thing about this show, Doni, is that it's called From Addiction to Deliverance. So the show peddles hope, and that if you're in addiction, you can overcome. And the backbone of all of my shows, whether we're talking about Serenity House, I have the Homegoing Service for a Man Named Jesus, Discord in the all of my shows are rooted in ministry. So it's an opportunity to preach. It's an opportunity to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and to show people that no matter what it is, whether you're dealing with some type of addiction, whether it's drug addiction, alcohol addiction, because there are different types of addiction. There's eating addictions that you can overcome. So people come to our shows and they are entertained, but they are transformed. And that's been a staple of our success for our stage plays.
Has the Baltimore Times been a supporter of your plays?
Absolutely. You pick up the paper and you will see information about my plays in the Baltimore Times. I mean, just the Baltimore Times, individuals like yourself, Heaven 600, John Carrington, Dina Wan over at the Baltimore Times, Dr. Francis Murphy Draper, Mr. Jake Oliver, just all of these folks have been instrumental, and the people who are listening to your show right now, the biggest piece has been the word of mouth. People come out and they see our shows, and they not only see them and come back, they spread the word. So we have a lot of positive word of mouth out there about our shows that have led us to have sellout after sellout after sellout. And I'm just encouraging folks to come on down to Solace Point and see Serenity House from Addiction to Deliverance, and you will be transformed. And if you're not able to come, I'm encouraging people to buy some tickets and to help someone who may be struggling with addiction but doesn't necessarily have the financial means to come see the show, to be able to come see the show through ticket sponsorships.
Is there a website?
My website is battlestageplays.com, and they can also feel free to call 443-531-4787. And Doni, if I could say this too, I saw something pop up, I think on the screen. Leslie Vass, I think he said Ursula Battle wrote a story on me back during my time at the Afro, but that's the other wonderful thing too. Just going back to journalism for
let me get the phone number. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get the phone number. Battlestageplays.com, and the phone number
443
531 4787. Yeah, we know Leslie Vass. Leslie Vass is a force by himself, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. I remember that. I've written so many stories over the years. I remember him, but there's so many people I've had an opportunity to meet and to write about. And I've gotten to a place now, I don't even remember all of them because I've written so many stories. But
do people come up to you on the street?
Yes.
And ask you, do you remember them?
Yes. Do you know what my first story was, Doni, at the Afro? I did a story about Larry Jeter, Dimensions. I think it was Dimensions in Music. That was my first story. That was my first assignment under Mr. Joe Green Bishop, and that was my first story.
Now, I don't remember my first assignment at the Afro, but I remember my biggest assignment was when Wally Hall sent me down to the Baltimore Sun to ask the editor why they had two reporters, including a black man named Ivan. I'll leave his last name out because he is a nice guy. But Ivan and his white guy snuck into Parent J. Mitchell's hospital room, in his hospice room.
Wow.
They snuck in there. And I called the editor, and they sent me down to the third in charge, a lady named Sandy Boniski. And Ursula, it was like 9/11. You could hear a pin drop. She could not believe this young black man called her up and called her on the carpet. Wow, your reports. So tell me, and I'm working on, I got 2 books now, Ursula.
Okay.
Unapologetically Black and I Am Black Wall Street. But my next book will be on the future of the black press. So while I have you, I gotta ask you.
Okay.
With newspaper distribution and the number of newspapers decreasing, and with the advent of online platforms like this and websites, what do you foresee happening to the black press down the road?
Well, I honestly believe, Donnie, that the black press will always be around. I have to go back to when I was writing for the Afro, and Mr. Jake Oliver. I have to give Mr. Oliver his props, because Mr. Oliver was a visionary. He saw back during that time in the 1990s where newspapers were going. So he was talking about things around the world, the World Wide Web, papers going online. He was talking about those things in the 1990s when people were, sort of still into having that hard copy newspaper. He saw way ahead, and he saw way. He was just a visionary. Continues to be a visionary. And I bring up Mr. Oliver because I think that as long as you have those visionaries that see where things are going, there's always going to be the black press. And then you have people who are, still a little old school. See, I still like to have a newspaper in my hand. I still like to pick up a paper and read it. And so I do read online, but I just like a newspaper.
But it costs so much.
I know, but I like a good old fashioned newspaper.
But first of all, also you have a generation today.
I know.
Who's never held a newspaper.
I know. But whatever format it's in, whether it's a newspaper, online, I believe that the black press is always going to be viable. The black press is always going to be around, and I just got to get to the spiritual side of things as I see it. That I believe that the Lord has always been with the black press, always has been with the black press, and as long as the Lord continues to be with the black press is going to continue to be relevant. And no matter what comes up against the black press is going to continue to thrive and survive. That's my thought. No matter what.
It's challenging because now
always has been.
Yeah, so it's a new challenge today.
Yeah, always has been a challenge.
Now the new challenge is Google.
Yes.
Because Google runs the internet. It's like the mob. And if they say your website does not exist, they can put you on a black list, a white list, or whatever the color list it is.
Yeah, and I think too, Donnie, it's a little bit of pivoting and adapting. So I think that, and I'm talking about the Baltimore Times and the Afro have done a phenomenal job with adapting with those changes. So you can go online on the Baltimore Times, or you can go on afro.com and read the paper. You can read the archives. You can read papers that were put out weeks ago, years ago. So I think that as those changes have come, the black press has adapted to those changes, while also maintaining the hard copies for those people, the hard copy editions for those people who want to read the hard copy. So I think that, yes, change has come and it's continuing to come, but I think that the black press continues to roll with the punches and remain viable.
It's a tricky game. Also advertising.
Yeah.
There was a time you could go straight to the Baltimore Times advertising, but if you're printing fewer papers, you're hiring fewer reporters.
Yeah.
The ad game has changed. And especially when you look at online, Google, Facebook, you now need video ads.
Right. That's true. And I think a lot of times people's attention spans are not as, you got to hit that news quick. You got to hit that news quick. So a lot of times pictures and videos are more visually appealing than a lot of words. I would think that even myself as a journalist, I'm a very detailed writer. So I consider, I try to make sure that every piece that I write is its own masterpiece, so to speak. It has its own uniqueness. It has its own appeal. It has pieces to it that are trying to achieve something, whether it's trying to bring about change, awareness, or what have you. However, I may not have as much of a word count to tell that story as I would have had years ago. But I still have to hit the mark in terms of what I'm trying to convey through my story. So even myself as a journalist, I've had to adapt with adapt to the changes that you've talked about, whether it's cutting down the number of words in which I'm trying to tell a story, whether I am trying to capture some video that will help tell the story as well, taking my own pictures. But video and photography is something that I learned quite a bit at Coppin and University of Baltimore. So even those things have helped me to grow and adapt, because I have to be able to not only tell the story through my writing, but also be able to visually tell my stories through the photos that I take, as well as the video that I capture. So I've had to pivot myself.
The biggest question I have to ask you is, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Who is the next Ursula battle?
The next Ursula battle. Let's see.
If the black press is going to survive, you and I have to pass the baton to someone.
That's true. That's true. That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know off the top. What I do know is that they're out there. I don't know exactly who that is, but what I can say is this. I don't know who that person is, but what I can say is this: they have to have the tenacity, have to be. I think I came in with the right name, battle, because it is a battle when you're trying to write about some things that you feel will help to right injustice. So tenacity. You have to have determination. It's not. I think that you have to approach a story with the drive to that no matter what, you're going to tell a story, and to approach the story like I said earlier, it's not just a story for me. It's its own work of journalistic art, and I put that type of work ethic into every piece that I do. I want it to be accurate in terms of, I guess everybody makes mistakes, but I try very hard to make sure that my stories are error-free. So in other words, I don't rush through a story. It's not, about being, everybody wants to be paid for a story, but it's about what am I trying to tell through a story? So I think that, that type of approach and being willing to just, no matter what, to tell the story that you need to tell through that particular piece. So I think those things will play a major part in who the next Ursula battle is, and not necessarily turning away opportunity, because what I will say is this is, and it's very important, is that when the Afro-American newspaper hired me, I wasn't necessarily making a lot of money. However, it was an opportunity, and the Afro put me in a position where I got an opportunity to meet folks like yourself, of course, and also through Coppin, I had an opportunity to meet people like Rock Dutton and interview Mayor Schmoke. I mean, it was so many people that the Afros, my tenure with the Afro allowed me to be able to meet, to interview, to get a real good idea about some parts of the city that I didn't know about, even though I grew up in Baltimore. So I say that to say that you have to be willing to not necessarily be willing to take a job for money, but you have to start somewhere and understand that that particular position may propel you to another place. So I believe that, that I just strongly believe that. So
Ursula, we'd like to recognize you on February the 27th. That's a Tuesday. We'd like to give you a Black Wall Street Award. They look like this.
Really?
Yeah, we celebrate Black entrepreneurs and professionals, as well as the people who support them regardless of race. And this will be down at Hoodfellas. Do you accept?
Thank you. I humbly accept.
So we have to have
that's
you
a blessing
there, because you open the door for me. I get to go to the White House today and hang out with April Ryan and a bunch of other people. I was there recently, just this week, and I was looking at the cadre of people coming up behind me. I'm 58, and there are people over there now 30 navigating the White House.
Yeah.
And that's because of people like Kevin White, people like Erica Lowe, people like Roderica Applewhite, people like Corinne Jean-Pierre, Black people who work at the White House, who understand. Even Vice President Kamala Harris this week acknowledged the Black press. And so in that spirit, I recognize you because you showed me the ropes early on. 30 years ago. 30 years.
I cannot believe
25 years ago.
I can't believe that time went by so quickly. And Donnie, I'm gonna tell you, just kind of piggyback on what you just said. Those individuals over at the White House who you've had an opportunity to interview and meet. The Afro, I was working at the Afro when I went over. I will never forget when I went over to DC and covered the Million Man March. Those types of experiences that I had as a journalist of actors, because to be there at the Million Man March and to actually see, the unity and just the strength of all of those men that came together and to be able to.
Not one incident.
It was amazing.
Not one incident.
Not one incident.
These fools in January 6th climbed the walls of the Capitol, and they're talking about their fearless leader actually becoming president of this great nation again.
That's right.
Help me, somebody. Would the Lord's justice please rain down like a thunderstorm?
That's right.
And put this fool in the prison he belongs in. Right. I'm talking about Orange Man. I can't believe this fool.
That's right. I tell you, that's what I say. That we got to keep that black. We got to keep the Black press going. But like I said, it just those experiences. I've had an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl and see the Ravens win the Super Bowl not once but twice, and NBA All-Star Weekend. I mean, there's all kinds of things that I've had the experience to cover through both the Afro and the Baltimore Times as a journalist. And you really can't, I mean, those things are really priceless, while at the same time being able to cover those events while simultaneously being able to write the stories about, a person who was supposed to be getting public assistance in some way, who's trying to feed her grandchildren, who's trying to raise them because the parent may have passed on or been incarcerated. She's trying to raise the grandkids, but she's not getting the assistance that she needs to be able to get. So she calls the Afro, and she needs some publicity around that. And so I'm able to write a story, and the benefits that she was denied getting, she was able to get. Just all kinds of just things that I feel like God has allowed me to do through my journalism, and now allow me to not just do it through journalism, but to be able to tell the stories of people through my plays. It has really been an amazing journey, and to be in a position to be able to bring about transformative change, I think has been very rewarding for me. Very rewarding for me. And listen, I'm gonna keep, and listen, Donnie, I'm gonna keep going. I mean, I've been doing plays now and writing for the paper for probably over 25 years. And there are some things out there that I'm going to continue to push through my stage plays, through my journalism writing. And again, I just like to take this opportunity to just thank you and your viewers for reading my pieces and for supporting our shows, because that's what's made it possible for me to continue to do what I'm doing, of course, with the help of the good Lord.
Is there a dream that you have yet to pursue?
Well, one of the things that I wanted to do was to write a book, and I've done that. So I have a book that I've written called Serenity House: From Addiction to Deliverance, and that's actually going pretty well. I mean, I don't really promote the book. I don't promote the book as much as I probably should, but I sell a lot of those books at my shows, and many people have read that book and said that the book has really transformed them. And so that was one goal that I had.
Where's the book available?
You can get the book on Amazon.com. It's called Serenity House: From Addiction to Deliverance. And one thing that going back to your question, that I've always wanted to do, that I haven't done yet, but the road is really opening for me to be able to do this, is to be able to take my shows out onto a national platform and to
I
take
was
my
wondering
pieces.
that.
Yeah,
Where do you want to
yeah,
go?
it's happening.
Where?
It's happening.
Where do you want to go?
All over. All over. I want to be able to.
You got to go to New York first.
I want to go all over the country with our shows, because I think that the ministry of our shows is not only national but international, not just local. So the things that are happening in Baltimore that we're touching on in Baltimore, whether it's crime, unforgiveness, racism, or whatever the case may be, those things aren't just happening in Baltimore. Those things are happening all over the world. So
Okay,
I feel
so Ursula, you got to get a TV camera. That's all I can tell you. You got to get a TV camera.
Yeah, we gotta take this out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know
So
you have another appointment. I know you have another appointment. But any final thoughts? And thank you for staying with us this long. I don't want to get in the middle of in the way of your coins. But any final thoughts?
My final thoughts would be for everyone that's watching to come out and support our shows. Again, Doni has information up, battlestageplays.com. Please come out and see our show down in Turner Station. And that show is actually Saturday, February 24th, 2024. It's a Black History Month presentation being presented by the Turner Station History Center. So it's for a worthwhile cause. We're going to come right back a couple weeks after that show. We had a tremendous showing last year of the homegoing service for a man named Jesus. That's coming back in March and April of this year. Sellout shows last year. Again, we're going to be coming back with those shows. And I just ask that you continue to support. If you haven't seen the show, come out and see it. And I just like to leave everybody with this, and that is to show love. You know, I'm a big proponent of just peace and trying to illustrate through my shows the power of faith and forgiveness. And I just say that, you know, if someone's listening that has a issue with someone, particularly when it comes to unforgiveness, forgive. It goes a long way. Good deal.
Up to date, down tomorrow. Do your day and everything will follow. Nothing to it but to do it. I got to do it, regardless of how I feel. I am somebody. I am my brother's keeper. Support the Black press. Thank you, Ursula.
You're
Good
welcome.
morning, world.
Thank you. Thank you for that award.
February 20.